Welcome to this explainer. Right now, we're watching the 2026 conflict between the US and Iran escalate at breakneck speed. But to really get what's going on, we're going to unpack this by starting with a highly specific, kind of surprising tactical oddity before we look at how it cascades into a massive global economic issue. Let's get into it. So, the July 8th ceasefire collapses, right? And immediately, the US military completely shifts its tactical gears. Instead of going after massive, heavily fortified military bases or nuclear sites right out of the gate, they start directing a heavy volume of strikes at modest, seemingly civilian fishing piers. Take Banud Pier in Bushehr province, for example. You literally have these modest, wooden fishing boats totally engulfed in flames following targeted U.S. military strikes on coastal infrastructure. Now, you might be wondering, why on earth is a global superpower firing on wooden boats? Well, to figure that out, we have to pull back the curtain on the strategic reality of Iran's maritime forces. Section 1. The Swarm Strategy. This all comes down to how the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, operates in the incredibly narrow, shallow waters of the Strait of Hormuz. It's a strategy that completely flips traditional naval warfare on its head. Think about it. On one side, you have the U.S. Navy, relying on these massive destroyers, aircraft carriers, and just overwhelming, concentrated firepower. But on the flip side, the IRGC uses an asymmetric swarm strategy. Instead of large warships, they use small motorboats. They rely on sheer numbers, incredible speed, and civilian concealment to basically rush and overwhelm targets that are way, way bigger. And it's the sheer scale of this hidden fleet that makes it such a wild card. Intelligence estimates actually point to a fleet of somewhere between 500 and 1,000 of these heavily armed, fast attack vessels. The kicker here? They're effectively hiding right out in the open in civilian ports, just blending in with regular maritime traffic until a crisis hits. That is exactly why the U.S. has carried out over 300 strikes since July 8th. They're trying to systematically dismantle this vast, dispersed network and aggressively enforce a naval blockade. Section 2. A widening campaign. But here's the thing. As the days have ticked by, this highly tactical maritime operation in the south has exploded into something much bigger. We've seen a rapid, total disintegration of diplomatic efforts. Remember back in June 2026 when a peace memorandum of understanding brought a momentary pause to hostilities? Yeah, well, by July 8th, that ceasefire completely collapsed. Fast forward just over a week to July 16th, and U.S. strikes expanded aggressively, moving well beyond the southern coastline and deep into northern Iran. The geography of this conflict has shifted dramatically. The U.S. isn't just hitting Bandar Abbas, which is a major naval and IRGC base, or the heavily fortified Greater Tumb Island anymore. The campaign is struck near the civilian nuclear plant region in Bushehr, and most notably, the capital city of Tehran was targeted for the very first time in this latest round of attacks, alongside major ballistic missile production hubs. And the political rhetoric is matching this military escalation beat for beat. U.S. President Donald Trump has taken a very unyielding stance on the campaign, issuing a stark public warning. He stated, "They know the story. They better behave." He's even explicitly warned that Iranian bridges could be the next targets if Tehran doesn't comply with U.S. demands. Section 3. Regional Retaliation. Now, as we know, in asymmetric warfare, a massive escalation on one side almost guarantees a severe reaction on the other. Tehran isn't just defending its borders, they are actively striking out at U.S. allies across the Middle East. They've fired missiles and kamikaze drones at Bahrain, which, importantly, is home to the U.S. Fifth Fleet, as well as at targets in Kuwait and Jordan. Actually, in Jordan, the military had to intercept 8 incoming missiles that were aimed right at U.S. communication systems and fuel storage facilities. The response from Iran's military leadership has been absolutely stark. Ibrahim Zolfagari, an Iranian military spokesperson, came right out and declared, "All infrastructure in the region will be crushed." They are quite literally promising complete regional destruction if their own infrastructure continues to be targeted. And they firmly declared the Strait of Hormuz to be an inviolable red line. But of course, the real tragedy here is the devastating human cost, caught right in the middle of this geopolitical crossfire. The civilian impacts are just severe. Iran has accused the U.S. of a barbaric attack near a children's cancer hospital in Ahvaz. That incident forced the emergency evacuation of 211 chemotherapy patients. On top of that, the Iranian Health Ministry is reporting at least 30 people killed and 260 injured from recent strikes in southern Iran alone. And the political fallout inside Iran is only cementing this reality. Iranian parliamentary speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, along with 180 MPs, are now publicly demanding the total termination of that June Memorandum of Understanding. They're threatening to tear the agreement up entirely, which effectively signals that whatever diplomatic channels were still open have now completely collapsed. Which brings us to Section 4, the global stakes. Because as we've seen time and time again, what happens in the Strait of Hormuz rarely stays in the Strait of Hormuz. The conflict is severely disrupting international trade and maritime safety. Take India, for instance. They are a massive supplier of global seafarers, with over 300,000 citizens in global shipping fleets. But following the recent deaths of 2 sailors, the Indian government has explicitly ordered ship owners to completely bar its citizens from working on any routes passing through the strait. It's just too dangerous. Meanwhile, the U.S. military is strictly enforcing its blockade, and they are taking some really extreme measures to halt traffic. In one highly publicized incident, a commercial, unladen oil tanker attempting to reach Karg Island basically ignored the blockade warnings. The U.S. response? Military aircraft fired Hellfire missiles straight into the vessel's smokestack to forcefully disable it. That's how tense the situation on the water is right now. And consequently, the global economic impact has been immediate. Brent crude oil prices have surged above $85 a barrel. That is a 15% jump from before the conflict even started. To put that into perspective for the everyday person, that translates directly to higher prices at the gas pump and increased costs for basically all consumer goods worldwide. It is a harsh reminder of just how incredibly sensitive our global energy markets really are to this one narrow maritime choke point. So this all leaves us with a pretty critical takeaway and a massive question that we all need to consider. As asymmetric warfare literally chokes off one of the world's most vital waterways, how much higher will the global cost of this conflict rise before diplomacy actually returns? What is the ultimate economic and, more importantly, human price that the rest of the world is going to have to pay? Thanks for joining me for this explainer. Keep a close eye on the Strait and keep learning.